Okay, welcome to episode 1 of the Home Base podcast. We are excited to get this going and interested to see what this turns into. But it's going to be a lot of fun. Either way, just got back from family reunion in Atlanta. It was an absolute blast, and it's really interesting to hear the things that they're talking about and how the market's evolving and changing, not only in the day to day world of real estate transactions, but also in the world of marketing and branding and those kinds of things. And that's why we're doing this. So it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be exciting. This is something that's brand new to me, and we're trying for the first time as I adjust my mic. So we're just going to jump right in. We're getting after it, and we're really excited to be here. So the Home Base podcast is now live, and we're excited to see where it goes. So episode 1 of the Home Base podcast. I'm Trey Watson. We are going to have 8 different topics of conversation today, and this is how these episodes are going to go for the time being as we're getting started off. We're going to have something for everybody, whether you are a future home seller, a future home buyer, first-time home buyer, if you're an agent, a team member, or just somebody who's genuinely interested in the real estate economy. And we're going to be talking about the economy as a whole as well. So all things real estate, all things business building. It's going to be a blast. So here we go. Topic number 1 today: what today's market rewards that hot markets never did. The easy one that you hear most people talking about right now is negotiating power for buyers. So we have a first-time home buyer. Imagine this: it's 2020, 2021, never been through this process before, and it's their first time getting pre-approved for a loan. It's their first time actually walking through houses with the intention of purchasing a home. Point being, they have no idea what they're doing. It's intimidating. It can be a touch scary at times, especially if you're navigating it on your own. What we're here to do is make the process easier, obviously. However, now that we're fast forwarding to 2026, we have more inventory on the market. That means more for buyers to choose from, and they can be kind of nitpicky, and that's what they want to be. That's the natural human tendency. So what is rewarded in today's market versus a really, really hot market is the ability to negotiate and the ability to go in and tweak terms so they put you in the best possible position. Some of those things include price and inspection terms. Those are the 2 big ones that people talk about. However, what we can also negotiate in is going to be things like closing costs. Closing date is going to be another one. Let's say first-time homebuyer specifically, you've got a lease that ends in 3 months, and you don't want to break the lease and pay the full 3 months. We might not be able to extend it a full 3 months, but we can probably get you a month and a half, which most government loans take about 45 days to close. So we might even be able to push it out to 60 days, let's say. So you only are breaking your lease for 1 month. There's times where we could push it out to 3 months. Not as common as a 2-month closing, but we can still do it. So it's not just price and inspection terms that we're negotiating. And by the way, that's another thing that in the COVID market, we'll call it, or in just hot markets in general, there's a lot of buyers that will waive their inspection rights completely to make their offer look more appealing to a seller. That's another thing that even if we're a cash buyer, or there's some other crazy circumstances, we don't have to waive our inspection rights. And we're seeing very, very few multiple offer type situations. If the house is priced extremely aggressively, we are still seeing those multiple offer type scenarios. Or if the house is just in a super desirable area where very, very limited inventory pops up and there's a bunch of buyers for that area, we'll see multiple offers in those types of situations. However, I would say 90% of the time right now, we don't have to waive those inspection rights. So you're able to have a home inspector come in, go through everything head to toe, give you a list of items that they deem wrong with the house, and then you actually have the opportunity to go ask the seller to correct those items. Now, with that being said, are they going to fix everything on the inspection report? Probably not. with and we still have the right to go in and ask them. And if there's major things that another buyer is going to be concerned with and ask for, they're probably going to go ahead and fix them because they know that they're going to be asked again, no matter who's coming in to buy the house. So, number one, negotiating power is at an all-time high for the past 6 to 7 years. Probably we really started seeing the multiple offers come in at the end of 2018. So the negotiating power that buyers have right now is at an all-time high for the past 8 years or so. That's number one. The other thing that's rewarded in today's market that wasn't necessarily rewarded in a hot market, or the COVID market, let's call it, because it didn't have to be rewarded, was pre-listing staging for sellers. This is the biggest thing. We're going to talk about this next as well, but strategy is so much more important in today's market than it was for the past 6 to 7 years. There wasn't a ton of inventory on the market, so from a pricing, when it comes to pricing, we didn't have to be super competitive because there really wasn't any competition on the market. In today's world, we have to be super competitive when it comes to our pricing strategy and our condition strategy as well. And this is not something that most people talk about and most listing agents talk about, is the strategy of making your home appeal to the most amount of home buyers. Now, I'm going to have a little bit of fun with this, but let's say you're living in an area that's predominantly Missouri Tigers fans, and you have the walls plastered with the University of Kansas Jayhawk banners. You're not going to be appealing to the most amount of home buyers in your area. And that's a fun example. The point that I'm trying to get across is we've got to make sure that when you walk into that house, a buyer walks into that house, the paint looks good, the decorations look good, the furniture looks good, and staging your property so a buyer can see themselves living there. The biggest key to that is making it appeal to the most amount of people, because you never know who the buyer is going to be that walks into your house coming for a viewing. So if we have stuff up on the walls that's super polarizing, like a Kansas Jayhawk banner or flag, you're going to turn a lot of people off. And that's a poke at all of my friends that are KU fans. However, we've got to make this thing appeal to the most amount of people. And the best way to do that is to have it laid out and staged in a manner that buyer can see themselves living there. So what we're going, you see this on HGTV probably, but we're going for neutral tones, neutral paint colors. We don't want to have red and blue plastered all over the walls. And we want to make it to where you walk in and you can either see yourself living there immediately, or it's little subtle tweaks that you can make it your own. That's what's going to make it appealing to the most amount of home buyers that are going to come walk through your home. So the two things that are rewarded in today's market that aren't rewarded in hot markets are essentially negotiating power and strategy, are the two things that we're going to boil it down to. I mentioned pricing strategy, and that's the number one most important thing. If it's not priced correctly, buyers have all sorts of options right now compared to what they had a few years ago, and they're going to be picky, and they're going to go find another house that's priced within the correct price bracket that makes the most sense for them. So those are the two most things that are rewarded in today's market. Number two, why experience matters more in a balanced market compared to a hot market. In a hot market, a lot have heard, and we'll reference the COVID market, which really, in my opinion, started the end of 2018 is when our inventory really started creeping down to a low level. The end of 2022, middle of 2022 is when they raised interest rates a decent bit. They were really raised towards the end of the year and then into 2023. They've stayed pretty stable. They are coming down from where they were, which is great news for a lot of people. With that being said, more inventory on the market. This goes from two different sides. Number one, if you're a buyer in today's market, what we just said is you have more negotiating power. Negotiating power from an agent's perspective comes from knowing the market and what most sellers will do and what most buyers will do and what's fair in that time in the market. So if you have an agent that maybe isn't used to a balanced market, they may not know the little bit extra things that they could throw into a contract to get you as a buyer. Now, on the flip side of that, in a seller's world, buyers have more negotiating power. So they're going to ask you for more things. They're going to ask you for money off the price. They're going to ask you for more items to be fixed in the inspection period, things of that nature. And you need an experienced listing agent on your side that's had experience through a hot market and a balanced market in order to navigate that contract process to make sure that you're not giving up too much. So from a buyer's perspective, you want to make sure that you're getting everything that you can get. From a seller's perspective, same exact thing. You're making sure that you're not giving up more than you need to give up. So in a balanced market, there's this almost a struggle for power, if you want to look at it from that lens of who has the upper hand from a negotiating perspective. And you want somebody on your side that's able to navigate that process with you to ensure that you're putting yourself in the best situation for your future. Now, when I say this, if I'm an agent for a buyer, I have a fiduciary obligation to that buyer in order to do everything in their best interest and ask for everything that I can. That also means that if they're looking for something specific in a specific price range or a specific area, I've got to help them see when the house that's right for them pops up and help them understand, hey, I think that this is the best option for you, because what we don't want is to go into that negotiating process and ask for the moon and stars and then get nothing and not get the house that really they need to buy that's right for them. We're not talking about just going and buying anything. We're making sure that they're getting the house that they need to get for that time of life and making sure that they're in a good position. We're not overpaying for it, or if we're on the seller side, we're not taking too low for it. We need to be able to navigate the process in a balanced market, because there's more intricacies than placing a side in the yard, having 10 showings on the first weekend, and having 5 people write offers, and then you just go select the highest and best offer that's presented to you. We've got to strategically place ourselves on the market, so we're the house that buyers are going to choose in our price range. And then we're going through that contract process as well, understanding the market dynamics, what buyers will ask for, what they won't ask for. Again, at the end of the day, it's making sure we're putting ourselves in the best possible position for our future. Number 3, this is a topic that we have with pretty much every seller. This has to do, the topic is why overpricing feels safe, but is actually risky. This is a conversation that we have with every seller, and the fun thing is Rachel and I are we bought a house that we're remodeling. The remodel should be done in the next month and a half, and then we're going to be putting our house on the market. And as we prepare our house for the market, we're doing what we just talked about, which is ensuring that we have the stuff fixed on the inside. There's going to be stuff wrong with every house. Every inspection report that pops up, there's going to be a list of items on there. We're wanting to make sure that we have the issues fixed that we know about currently and have it in a good condition. And then we're starting to look at our pricing strategy. And because we've lived there for 4 years, because we got engaged at the house, because we got married at the house, we brought Goldie home to that house. We've got a lot of memories, and it's our money. So it's really, really personal to us how much we sell that house for, because that affects how much money we have in our pockets moving forward. So the game that I'm playing with myself is, how can we maximize the amount of money that's in our pocket at the end of the sale, but also not shoot ourselves in the foot and stay on the market for 6 or 9 months, and at the end of that be wondering, okay, our house didn't sell, what do we do now? In today's market, what benefits sellers the most is a fast sale with a really, really well qualified buyer. All of us sellers dream of a cash buyer that waives inspections and waives appraisals and closes in 2 weeks if we're out of the property already. The likelihood of that happening is not super likely. So we have all these other buyers, which is great, and we need to position ourselves on the market so we are the house that the most buyers say, hey, I want to go look at that and I want to write an offer. The way to do that is to price it right off the bat. So we're not going to, what we don't want is to price our house in a price bracket that the buyers who are buying in that price bracket have a ton of other options that are way better than us. We want to be in the price bracket where we're competitive and comparable to other houses, but we're just a touch better. That doesn't mean discount your house greatly. And I think that's what a lot of people hear when they hear we need to price the house aggressively or competitively. When we say that, what we mean is we need to place that house in the price bracket where we're going to get the most eyeballs on it, the most people through the door, and then the most people to write an offer. That'd be great if we had 5 on the first weekend. In today's market, it's not super likely. So I'm going through this with myself right now as I'm looking at comparable sales for our house and where we're going to place our house on the market. And it's hard as the person living at the house because you have all of your memories there. That house means so much to you. It's your thing, and we all think that our stuff is more valuable because we have those memories. It's just not the case in a buyer's eyes. They have no emotional attachment to that house. Number 2, we need to get that house in the price bracket where we're going to get showings. That's the name of the game. We can't have offers unless we get showings, so we've got to be priced in the right price bracket. So moving forward there, it feels safe to answer the question. Overpricing your house feels safe because we can always come down. That's what everybody hears and that's what everybody says. It is very true. However, if you price your house where it's going to be on the market for even 2 to 3 months, the buyers that are going to come in and look at your house at that point in time, and let's say you do a price reduction, let's say you overprice it and you know that going into it, 2 months down the road, you do a price reduction, the buyers come in and look at the house and they can see the data. Data is available to everybody, which is a great thing, and they can see how long that house has been on the market, and it's been on the market for 2 or 3 months, and they say, hey, it's been on the market for a while. There's no other competition as far as buyers go. There's nobody else making other offers. We're not in a multiple offer situation. Let's go ahead and offer even lower than what they're listed at now, and they're going to expect in today's market that you're going to take lower than the list price. So what we're saying by that is it feels safe overpricing your house because you can always come down. That's a dangerous game, especially if you're having to move somewhere or that house payment that you're making is going to eat up a big chunk of your savings account. That's money going out the window that more than likely isn't going to come back because those buyers are going to expect that you're going to take less than list price. That's just the way that they see things. It's risky because if you sit on the market for a while, buyers are going to wonder why it hasn't sold and what's wrong with it. We hear this all the time, almost every day. We get people send us houses, say, hey, this looks like a really cool house. It seems like it's overpriced and it's been on the market for a while. What's wrong with it? That's the exact words that they use. And our response is typically, well, it's probably overpriced. However, until we get in the door, we'll have no idea. We have no clue what's wrong with it. But there's got to be a reason that other buyers haven't chose this house. And we might go take a look at it. We might not. A lot of the times we hear buyers say, if it's been on the market that long, there's got to be something wrong with it. Let's not even waste our time. So it feels safe to overprice because you can always come down. However, at the end of the day, if it sits on the market for too long, buyers are going to wonder what's wrong with it and come in expecting that they can lowball you and there's going to be negotiation room. And you're going to end up taking less for your property. So that's why it's so important to price your house properly, aggressively, or competitively, however you want to say it, right off the bat, because a faster sale right now means more dollars in your pocket, a better, more qualified buyer that maybe is not going to nitpick as much, or they're not going to have issues with their loan down the road 30 days in, right before closing, and the deal completely blows up. Topic number 4, what buyers notice in their first 30 seconds of a showing. This is a a fun conversation. And I say that in a manner that it can be a hard conversation at times. And here's what experienced agents won't be able to tell you, either because they don't know or they don't know how to have the conversation. This is a whole nother thing in market dynamics where it's a balanced market and there's a little bit more intricacies that go through the process. Is you've got to be able to explain the hard things and have the hard conversations. If you can't do that, you're going to lead your clients down a road that's not going to put them in the position that's best for them. What those conversations look like is this exactly. What does a buyer notice within the first 30 seconds? I'm going to tell you right now, the number one thing is smell. If we've got a house that smells, and I was a teenage boy once, so I know my parents dealt with this, but I come home sweaty from baseball practice or football practice, and I leave my football pads by the front door. Well, what do you think a buyer's going to smell right when they walk through the front door, even if it's been removed but it's been sitting there for a while? Is they're going to smell my sweaty, gross football pads or baseball gear, whatever it is. And it's so strange how fast a smell can turn a buyer off to a house. When you smell the smells that aren't very desirable, they automatically think something's wrong with the rest of the house, and it's always going to smell like that. Now, will it always smell like that? No, it's not going to always smell like that. But in a world where buyers have all these options to choose from, it's interesting how it happens. It's pretty instantaneous. When a buyer walks in a house, I can typically tell within the first 30 to 60 seconds if this is the house for us or not. And it's going to be the house that they're going to be purchasing. And a bad smell can ruin the best finishes, the best staging, all of those things. It's a sensation. It's a vibe when you walk into the house and there's good smells or bad smells. Now, this is interesting also. You can light a ton of different candles, but if you have 5 different candles that all have a different scent, they can smell great individually, but once they clash and combine, it can turn into the most hideous odor you've ever smelled. So that's going to be a tip for staging your house for a showing specifically, is lighting candles or having the scent diffusers or whatever it might be. Is if you're going to have a scent, make it the same scent throughout the entire house. If they walk in the front door and smell something that smells really great, and then they go into a bedroom and it smells horrible, again, it's going to make them question the entire house, because there's one side that smells good, there's one side that smells bad. We're not real sure what else is going on. It's kind of a mind game, and it's a mental hack, I guess you could say, but the mind plays tricks on you when your mind is left to curiosity. So if you start wondering about something, your mind is going to go towards the cautious, pessimistic side. So smell is going to be the number one thing that they notice within the first 30 seconds of a showing. Number 2 is going to be clutter and things left out. The human eye is drawn to things that look out of place. It's just the way that we are. When you walk in and something looks out of place, your eyes are immediately drawn to that. Your mind is immediately drawn to that. You're wondering what in the world's going on. So clutter is another big thing that buyers are going to notice within the first 30 seconds. If you walk in the front door and there's stuff everywhere, this is another part of the hard conversation, is we'll have sellers that'll have some decor and items that is really special to them. And on their own, they might look great, right? But if we have a million different things all over the place and everything looks disorderly, cluttered, discombobbled, whatever word you want to throw at it, their mind's going to instantly go to, holy moly, this feels out of place. It doesn't feel like everything flows. So the 2 biggest things are going to be smell. The second thing is going to be clutter. If you can walk into a house, it's like a hotel room or a resort room, right? You walk in, everything's in its place. The smell is there. The lights are on the way they're supposed to be on. There might be music in the background, whatever it is. When you walk in and you feel peace, that's what us as humans are looking for in a home, is a place where there's no chaos, where we can come home and relax, be with our friends or our family, and have that as a place of constant in our lives. And so when it feels cluttered, when it feels disorganized, when it feels dirty or smelly, that automatically puts them in a place of this. I don't see this being a place that I can relax, call home, and get away from the chaos. So those two things, smell and clutter. The next thing we're going to go into, the biggest myth consumers still believe about real estate. This, I might sound like a pessimist here. I promise my natural operating style is optimistic. However, I'm going to sound like a bit of a pessimist here. And I'm going to go straight to interest rates. I'm going to go to the hottest topic that everybody's talking about right now is when are interest rates going to come down? We saw interest rates around the COVID time period around 3. Some people got under 3. There's a lot of people right now that have interest rates between 3 and 4, and then they start ticking up. And here's the thing with the interest rate hike that we saw starting in the middle of 2022 is it's the fastest interest rate hike that we've had in the history of the housing market. Why that matters is from an expectation standpoint from both the real estate agent and the consumer. If you have the population of consumers that are set on a 3% interest rate and they hear this is great, and then all of a sudden somebody gets a 3.5 or a 4 and they're like, whoa, that's a whole percentage higher. Consider that, but go from a 3 basically to a 5 overnight. And then they continue to trickle up, and we went from a 5 to a 6 a short time later, what felt like overnight. There was people getting close to 8% interest rate at one point in time. So two things here. Number one, when we look at the history of interest rates, we hear a lot of my generation, it would be our grandparents talk about when they bought their first house, they had an 18% interest rate. Dave Ramsey talks a lot about this. 18% interest rates, not just for businesses and credit and things like that, but for an actual home mortgage, an 18% interest rate. Now, that's about the highest it's been. That's on the totally other side of a 3% interest rate. But when you look at the long-term average of interest rates, they sit right about 6 is the average for the past 40 to 50 years. Right now, we're right there. We're right back to about that average line. We stayed at about a 6.5 to 7 for a little while. We kind of teetered between a 6.25 and a 6.75. Right now, I just got a text from a lender saying that we're about 5.75 to 6.25 in that ballpark. Obviously, that depends on credit score, income, debt to income ratios, things like that. So don't quote me on that. Talk to your local lender if you're in that part of the process. Now, the biggest myth that consumers still believe is we're going to see that interest rate drop off of a table. When you pay attention to the news, when you pay attention to the social media sites that are trying to generate a lot of traffic, their job is to generate views and generate interest. And that either comes in the form of inciting fear or major excitement. When we hear interest rates are going to drop, our mind automatically goes, they're dropping off a table and they're going straight down just like they went straight back up in the middle of 2022. What I believe will happen based off a few things, I'm not going to get too nerdy on you here, but when you look at unemployment and you look at a few different things here, consumer debt, consumer income, cash in the bank, those kinds of things matter, but it's unemployment and inflation are the two biggest things in determining interest rates. What other people don't know is when the Fed adjusts their rate of funds, that directly correlates to what a bank or a lender can borrow money from the government for, but the bank still has a spread on top of that rate. So just because the Fed cuts rates doesn't mean the banks have to cut rates. And the reason that banks will either cut their rates or increase their rates is based on certainty in the market. That's a whole nother topic for another episode. We could probably have an episode just based on that alone where we nerd out and go really, really in depth. What I don't want to put you guys to sleep, though, in this episode. We'll save that for another time. The myth is that interest rates are going to fall off a table and they're going to go right back down. When you look at where we're at in the economy as a whole, we're getting back to balance. We got out of whack in COVID time, obviously, and that shot us in one direction. And then all of a sudden, COVID stops, the world opens back up, and inflation's gone through the roof, and they've got to raise interest rates to fight inflation, and things kind of go the other way for a little bit. We've seen inventory, which is just the number of houses available on the market right now today, go back up towards what should be on the market. We're still not there. It's still not quite a true balanced market when you look at the amount of inventory on the market based on our population. That's going to differ from area to area. In the greater Springfield area, southwest Missouri, our inventory has increased greatly. Here's the interesting thing is our inventory is not back to where it was pre-COVID. And really 2016 is the benchmark that I'm using. And this is a little nerdy and in depth, but we had about 3,000 active listings on the market in southwest Missouri in our general area. And we're in the low 2,000s right now. We're right around 2,100. We've kind of teeter-tottered around there. So we're not quite back to where we were, and our population's grown. So if I were to boil it down to one point, the biggest myth that consumers have is that interest rates are going to plummet. We're pretty balanced in the economy as a whole right now. I don't see a real big reason to drop rates a whole lot more. I think they will drop them a little bit more, but they're certainly not going to go back to the threes. I would be shocked if we get down into the fours, if we even get below 5 in the next couple of years. I think we're doing pretty good where we're at, and I think they'll drop them a touch just to get the real estate market kind of juiced up a little bit, because we have seen such a slowdown the past couple of years. So there you go. That's the biggest myth. Moving on to the next point has to do with more of the agents, and this is going to be more towards the business side of things. The topic is the difference between busy agents and productive agents. And this is going to hurt some feelings, and probably including mine. I'm going to speak to myself here, but it's so important to remember and hear that busy and productive are not the same thing. In fact, they don't even correlate. And here's why. Busy means that you have a lot of tasks. Productive means that you have important tasks that you have completed. So if we're running around doing a bunch of things that don't really matter, we might be moving around a lot and we might be tired at the end of the day. But when you look up and you feel like you ran 100 miles an hour and you ask yourself, okay, I was busy all day today, what did I accomplish? And you really can't name anything, that's busy. When it comes to productivity and moving the business forward, what that looks like is moving our big rocks. And if you're familiar with the Pareto principle or the 80-20 principle, we're trying to move our big rocks. And so we might only get 3 things done in the day, but those 3 things can be major move our lives forward type of events, to where we can say, yes, this is going to propel my business forward. And this is the cool part of that principle, the 80-20 principle. Go look it up if you haven't heard of it. It talks about doing the important things and moving your big rocks. Is it's not just in business. It's not just in real estate. It can be in your personal life as well. For instance, I'll use personal example is tonight when we get home, Rachel and Goldie and I are going to go on a walk around the neighborhood. That is a big rock for us, because that's intentional time that we're spending together, and we get to have one-on-one conversations. Goldie can't talk yet, but she'll babble in the stroller. But that gives Rachel and I a chance to talk one-on-one. We don't have our phones with us. We're undistracted. That's a big rock for us, because that allows us to connect. It's the same thing in our business and real estate workload principles. If we're not doing the things that's going to move our business forward, which either A, bring in more clients for us to be able to serve at a really high level, or B, work on systems that allow us to serve those clients at a really high level, then we're not going to have business tomorrow. And that's the whole perspective of this thought process, is the big rocks need to be taken care of every day. The small rocks will either fall off the table and they won't get done. We need to make sure that the things are getting done that need to get done, But that allows us to get the important stuff accomplished in the first part of the day, and then push the little stuff off. The stuff that has to get done is going to get done, whether you like it or not. Before you go to sleep, the stuff that's required is going to get done. The big rocks don't always come in a form of urgency, and that's why so many people skip over them, is they don't look important right now. What they are important for our future. And so when we accomplish those big rocks first, we get the stuff that's going to be important to our future out of the way, and we know the stuff that is important and necessary is going to happen anyway later on in the day. And the busy agents do the little unimportant stuff all day long. So that's the mindset shift that I would encourage you to have, is figure out what those big rocks are for you. Whether it's for business, even if you're not in real estate, what are the big things that are going to be important for your future, and get those things knocked out in the first part of the day, or at least scheduled so you know when they're going to get done. Same thing for your personal life, same thing for your spiritual life, for your physical health aspect of life, whatever it might be. Make sure the big rocks are getting done. If the big rocks don't get done, you might not have it tomorrow. We've got 2 more things left. The next one is why systems outperform motivation. This is a fun one that we're working through currently. I think everybody's always working through this in every stage of their life. The biggest thing is systems outperform motivation, because when you have the right systems in place, you don't have to make a decision. Motivation is very important and is a necessary thing because it gets you started. What motivation struggles with is, or what we struggle with when it comes to motivation, is motivation can run out. Even if it has to do with something that's super important for you in your life, motivation can run out. It's kind of like a battery, and you've got to recharge motivation from time to time. When you have the proper systems in place, it's automated and it runs on its own and it doesn't need energy. It makes the decision whether you have motivation or not. So what we're going through currently, Rachel and I are currently doing a 75 hard, and we've got a group of several other people that are doing it as well, which is the whole deal where you've got 2 workouts a day. One of them's got to be outside. You got to drink a gallon of water. You've got to pick a diet and stick to a diet. You've got to read 10 pages out of a book, nonfiction. It's this whole big thing. And it's great because it forces you into habits that you're not used to having. And they're all healthy habits, which is great. The hard part is there's times where you run out of energy, but you still have tasks to complete. Interesting enough, one of the hardest challenges with the 75 hard that I've heard other people talk about is drinking a gallon of water a day. I've got an Nalgene that's over on my desk right now, and the system that I've put in place for water, for drinking a gallon of water a day, is I know that in order to get a gallon, I've got to drink 4 full Nalgenes throughout the day. So right now, to get 2 workouts in, generally we're waking up sometime between 5 and 6 to go get the first workout of the day done. And I know that if I can drink about a quarter of that Nalgene before I start my workout, I get my workout done. I'm going to drink another quarter of that Nalgene after my workout, and then I'm going to drink probably another quarter of it with breakfast, and then I'm going to drink another quarter of it on my way to work. I know that I now have gotten the first quarter of a gallon out of the way before I even get to the office, which is generally sometime between 9 and 9:30 on an average day. Then from there, I know I have 3 Nalgenes left, and I break the day up into thirds from there. So quarters overall. We've got the first quarter out of the way. We've got 3 quarters left. I know that if I can fill that Nalgene up once I get to the office, and I drink that whole Nalgene from the time I get to the office around, let's say it's 9:30 even, until lunchtime, and let's call that 11:45 or noon. If I can get that second Nalgene done by then, I only have 2 more Nalgenes to go. And generally speaking, it's pretty easy to get the third Nalgene done between noon and when I go home around 5. And then I have one more Nalgene. And generally, I get that done between 5 and 8. I like to get it done by 8, so I'm not drinking a ton of water right before I go to bed and have to get up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. So that's a really simple example of a system. However, I know that once I start doing that, it becomes regular, and I don't make it to where it's 10 p.m. and I still have 2 Nalgenes left, and I've got to force myself to go chug all of that water, and I run out of motivation. I just say, I don't want to do this because I don't want to have to be up all night going to the bathroom. We put a system in place to where motivation is now irrelevant, and that's the most powerful thing about systems is they don't require any motivation. They should require as minimal energy as possible so that when you have decision fatigue or your battery is drained, it's way easier for you to actually make a decision, or you don't even have to make a decision. It's just set up for you and is automated. So the systems make decisions so you don't have to, is what I have written down. I would probably tweak that and say systems make decisions easier to make when you don't have the energy to make the hard decisions or the motivation to make the hard decisions. We've made it through our first 7. We've got one more to go. The last one is a fun one, and there's more in depth to this than just what meets the eye. And I had to think on this one for a little bit, but why interest rates aren't the whole story. This really is specific to buyers. However, this does matter for sellers as well. What's most people will talk about is interest rates do matter for a portion because that helps determine what a buyer's monthly payment is going to be. It does also influence how many buyers in the market. Obviously, if interest rates go way up, like we saw in 2022, 2023, 2024, interest rates go way up, which means that monthly payments for everybody who is getting a mortgage on a home, their monthly payment goes way up. And if that exceeds their means to be able to pay for whatever house they want, they're not going to make a move. They're not going to buy their first house. They're not going to make a move up. And they might not even make a move down type move because they're going to go buy something that's way smaller and have a payment that's more. It just doesn't make sense. So interest rates aren't the whole story. They are a big part of the story, but they're not the entire story. Here's the other things. The other thing is sometimes it just boils down to personal needs. When you look at why a buyer buys a house or why a seller sells a house, there's a motivating factor behind their reason for doing so. A first-time home buyer is pretty similar most of the time. They want to go purchase a house that they will have equity in. It's an asset that appreciates. They have ownership. They have control. It makes sense. That's mostly the story for first-time home buyers. But let's say we're 5 years down the road from that person who bought their first home, and all of a sudden they've gotten married or they've had kids or whatever the situation might be, they need more space. And in order to have more space, they've got to go buy another house. In most instances, it doesn't make sense to go tear that house down and rebuild a new house on the same lot. So what do? They go get pre-approved for a loan. They go buy a new house. That's going to be one of the things. Needing more space is always going to be a motivating factor that drives buyers. Another thing could be that they need less space, like we just talked about. Somebody who's retired, the kids are out of the house. They've got a house that's got an upstairs and a basement. They're wanting something that's all on one level and a little bit more accessible. They'll want to go buy a house that has less space, that's easier to take care of. Those kinds of things. That's another motivating factor and is a personal need. Other things, divorce, deaths in the family, whatever it might be. There's plenty of other stuff that could fit into the personal needs category that's going to make somebody make a move. It's not just because an interest rate is low or an interest rate is high. Here's another thing that not a lot of people talk about, and this comes from my investor brain, is the equity that you have in your property and the ROI that you're getting, or the return on investment, rate of return, whatever acronym you want to throw at it, is how hard is your money working for you? If you have all this money tied up in a house, and this would be a great example, is you have more of a house than you need, and you have a business idea or you have an investment opportunity that you could pull that equity out and go invest in whatever it is and have your money grow at a higher rate or a safer rate or whatever it might be. That's going to be something else that it might be a better decision for you to go buy a piece of property, even though the interest rates are high, because you might be getting a better rate of return on your money compared to it sitting in the stock market or obviously sitting under a mattress in your bedroom. So couple other things, and this next point goes kind of hand in hand with that, is you look at appreciation on real estate, and the average over the long term history of the real estate market is between 4 and 5%, depending on who you talk to. And you're also, this has to do with more investment real estate. If you buy a property that you're going to rent out, you've got a tenant paying you rent. Obviously, we want numbers to work, so you're cash flowing on that. If you have questions about that, let me know. That's probably another topic for a whole nother episode. However, you've got a tenant that is paying you rent and you're using that to pay down the mortgage. You've got another essentially stream of appreciation through the mortgage pay down is what it is. Again, we can go into that in a different episode. But the note that I have written down here is good appreciation and value add scenarios will still beat a bad interest rate. What I mean by that is your monthly payment might be a little bit higher now, but let's say you have a higher interest rate for the next couple years. You hear a lot of people talking about refinancing their house or selling it and pulling the equity out and going to buy another house or investing it in a different manner. You might have a high interest rate. When it comes to investment real estate, this is why running the numbers are so important. This is something that people don't do enough of, is understand the investment that you're buying into. If you have a high interest rate, as long as the rent or the income that you have coming in from that property beats your monthly payment, including taxes, including insurance, including repairs that you've got to make, it doesn't really matter if you have a high interest rate, as long as you have enough income coming in to cover all of those expenses, and it still needs to cash flow at a rate that makes sense for you. So the point being, good appreciation. If you can buy a property in a good area that's going to have a solid appreciation rate, better yet, let's say that you can buy a property below market value that needs some value added to it through cosmetics or whatever it might be, and your equity instantly jumps up and you have a higher appreciation rate now on your investment, that still beats a bad interest rate for the time being. Appreciation rates go up and down just like interest rates go up and down. The biggest thing when it comes to real estate is time in the market, and you'll hear a lot. This is, again, investment type conversations, but time in the market beats short-term gains. If you're in that market for a long time, you're going to have compounding interest, you're going to have compounding appreciation when it comes to real estate, and that will always beat a bad interest rate at one point in time. Those appreciation rates have never gone down for more than a period of about 3 years, maybe 4 years. But the appreciation rates over the long term have continued to go up. They just don't, the downtrends don't stick. They continue going up. They're not making any more land, especially in areas that are desirable. So that's what I would say. Interest rates aren't the whole story. They do influence your monthly payment, and I will never advise anybody to buy a house that they cannot afford, or that they have to change their lifestyle so drastically that they don't have money for savings, they don't have money for other investments. You need to be in a house, in a property, in a situation that allows you to continue growing in the long term and in the future. That's the most important thing, is that you put yourself, whether you're a real estate agent, I'm talking to everybody now, a real estate agent, a business owner in any other industry, a buyer or a seller, you've got to make sure that you understand the market, you understand the dynamics, you understand the future implications, and you put yourself in a position that's going to benefit yourself down the road. Let's make sure we're happy right now. Let's make sure we're in a living situation that we enjoy and that we're okay with. But the most important thing is our future and setting ourselves up for a better life tomorrow. So that's my thing. Don't get me wrong. I love having a good time. I love fun experiences. I love all of that, and I want everybody to have that. But we need to make sure that we have a solid foundation before we go add on the extras, because when you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, number one, survival, number two is stability. We've got to make sure that we have a really solid foundation so that we feel comfortable where we're at and we're not losing sleep at night wondering if our electricity is going to get turned off or where we're going to go get our next meal. That's what we're trying to avoid with all that, by putting ourselves in the best position possible. So that's our 8 topics for today. Hope you got some value out of this. I think we're going to try to put this on Spotify as a podcast. We'll be seeing clips of this on our social media. If you have questions, go find us on our social media sites. It's the Springfield Home Team. Currently, we are on Facebook and Instagram. We're going to be adding a few more accounts. Get on there, see our content. Feel free to DM us or send us a text or an email. Let us know what questions you have, or if you have topics that you want us to talk about. We would love to hear from you. And if you got any sort of value, we would love for you to share this with a friend or with somebody who you think would also benefit from hearing this. So the Home Base Podcast, we're so excited to bring this to you. We're so excited to help all of you navigate this, no matter what stage you're in. We're excited for the future and to continue bringing value to you. Again, if there's anything that we can do for you, reach out to us. Let us know. The Home Base Podcast, I'm Trey Watson.